A pair of hands descends into the red dirt of a newly forming world. The soil is damp. It clings to the skin, heavy and unformed. Or the stone is broken. The divine response is to throw it away and start over. We think the prerequisite for a divine work is a clean slate. But David does not use the word bara. He does not say God spoke him into existence out of thin air. Verse 15 drops a heavier, earthier verb into the poem. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. The word for made here is Asah. David reaches back into the Genesis scroll. He pulls the dust of Eden directly into his own origin story. He says that the same hands that knelt in the mud, the same hands that folded the chaotic red dirt into a living man, are the hands that worked the heavy, hidden material of his own life in the dark. And the Hebrew word underneath, woven together, is rakam. It is an embroidery term. It is the language of taking scattered, chaotic threads, pulling them tight through the tension of a loom, and forcing them into a vast, deliberate pattern. Your life is not a magical, instantly perfect conjuring. It is a slow, tension-filled reconstruction. God takes the scattered fragments of biology, the chaotic threads of your ancestry, the pre-existing material of human history. But if you look closer at the ancient Hebrew resting beneath our English translations, at what actually happens in the dirt of Eden and the rubble, and he works them through the loom. He is not bothered by the chaos of the raw material. He is a master of the Asah. He knows how to build out of ruins. But even understanding that God formed us in the dark does not answer the question that haunts us in the light. What happens when the vessel he formed is shattered by our own hands? Jerusalem is collapsing. The shadows are lengthening over the ancient city. A prophet walks through the narrow, crowded streets. God has not sent Jeremiah to the temple to watch the priests. He has not sent him to the palace to speak to the king. He sends him down into the artisan district, into the damp, earthy air of a potter's workshop. The rhythmic, heavy thud of a stone wheel echoes in the room. Jeremiah stands in the doorway. He watches. A craftsman sits at the bench, kicking the heavy base with his foot. The wheel spins fast. The potter's hands are slick with water and mud. He presses his thumbs into a thick lump of dark clay. He pulls it upward. He shapes the walls of a vessel. He is performing the ancient art of Asah. He is working the dirt. But then, the text notes a catastrophic failure of broken lives. You start to see something the clean slate reading completely misses. The divine plan is not a blank page. It is a reconstruction. The clay resists. A hard stone. An unseen air bubble. A sudden flaw in the material catches against the potter's spinning hand. The walls warp. The vessel collapses. It mars. It becomes a misshapen, ruined lump, spinning wildly out of control on the stone. The material is compromised. The design is shattered. Look at what the potter does next. He does not stop the wheel. He does not wipe his hands in frustration. He does not turn around, walk out into the valley, and dig up a fresh, pristine block of untouched mud. He does not throw the ruined clay into the refuse pile. He takes the marred vessel, still spinning under his hands, and he crushes it down. He presses the broken, misshapen clay back into a heavy lump on the exact center of the wheel. And without missing a single beat, he begins to pull the walls back up. He shapes the exact same dirt into another vessel, as it seems best to him. The ruin is not a disqualification. It is the raw material for the next design. God speaks to Jeremiah over the wet friction of the spinning mud. Can I not do with you, Israel, as this potter does? When the nation shatters its covenant, when the people fall into idolatry, when the kingdom splinters into pieces, this is not a debate for a seminary library. It is diagnosing a quiet disease that most people do not even realize they have. God does not annihilate them to borrow a new people out of the void. He takes the broken pieces of Judah. He crushes them down in the exile of Babylon. And he spins the exact same scarred, ruined clay into a remnant that will eventually birth a Messiah. The wheel spins. The clay breaks. The potter does not flinch. It is easy to read this as ancient history. It is easy to watch the prophet in the workshop and nod at a theology of national restoration. We can accept that God rebuilt an ancient empire out of its own rubble. But the ancient workshop is diagnosing a deeply modern sickness. Because what happens when the clay on the wheel is you? A thumb scrolls across a glowing screen in a dark bedroom. A curated grid of flawless lives flashes past in a fraction of a second. The glass is cold against the hand, but the weight it creates in the chest is suffocatingly heavy. We are a species exhausted by our own pretending. We have built an entire modern culture around the illusion of the unblemished canvas, burying our shattered pieces under carefully filtered images and carefully constructed resumes. We bring this exhaustion directly into our theology. We sit in sanctuaries and convince ourselves that our moral failures, our fractured relationships, and the dark stretches of our personal histories are permanent disqualifications from the hands of the divine. We have constructed a religious culture around hiding our ruins. We are terrified of our own ruins. We constantly try to hide our broken pieces, our failures, the shattered fragments of our past decisions. Terrified that if God actually saw the misshapen lump of clay spinning out of control on the wheel of our lives, He would simply wipe it away. We secretly believe in a bara economy. We think God only sponsors pristine magic tricks, instantly producing flawless saints out of a sterile void. When we believe the lie of the clean slate, every failure becomes fatal. If a relationship shatters, if a career collapses, if an addiction breaks the surface, the modern instinct is to hide the pieces in the dark. We sweep the shards under the rug. We feel the sharp edges of our own guilt, smelling the stale ash of our burnt bridges. And we assume God has moved on to someone whose timeline is less complicated. But the ancient Hebrew text refuses to let us hide. The altar is not a showcase for pristine marble. It is a workshop for ruined clay. God is a master of the Asah. He is not sitting in the heavens, tapping His fingers, waiting for you to scrub your slate clean before He can finally begin His work. He does not require you to somehow unshatter the vessel of your life before you are allowed back into the room. Look at the biblical record. Moses was a murderer hiding in the desert rock. David was an adulterer, trembling in the cold dark of a palace. Peter was a coward, weeping bitterly under the sharp sound of a crowing rooster. Not a single one of them offered God a clean slate. Because we secretly believe God only works with pristine, untouched material. We think that if our lives are a mess, we are disqualified from being a masterpiece. Every single one of them was a ruined vessel. Perfection is not the prerequisite for purpose. It is the phantom that keeps you from the wheel. The divine architect walks directly into the debris. He kneels down in the mess of your poor decisions, in the rubble of the things that were done to you, and in the dust of the things you destroyed with your own hands. He gathers those exact fragments. He does not pretend the breaks never happened. And He does not magically erase the history of the clay. He presses His thumbs into the reality of what is actually there, folding the scars and the shattered edges directly into a new design. The tension you feel right now, the intense friction of your current season, is not the feeling of being discarded. It is the heavy, wet pressure of hands that refuse to let the material go. But to see the cosmic scale of what those hands are actually doing, you have to look back at the entire pattern. The Creator knelt in the heavy dust of Eden, and a living man breathed the air. Moses hacked common rock out of a jagged mountain, and the shattered covenant was written again. David traced the chaotic threads of his own biology, and a masterpiece was woven in the dark. To find the answer, you have to start at the very beginning of the Genesis scroll. There is a distinction hiding in the Hebrew text. Jeremiah watched a vessel collapse on a spinning wheel, and a ruined nation was pulled back into shape. A murderer hid in the desert rock, and a deliverer was forged for an enslaved people. A king wept in the cold dark of his palace, and the lineage of the Messiah was secured. A fisherman broke down under the sound of a rooster crowing, and the foundation of the church was poured. Same dirt, same hands. But here is the part I keep coming back to. The moment in the ancient workshop when the clay resists. The potter does not walk out into the valley to dig up afresh. pristine block of untouched mud. He presses his thumbs into the exact same ruined lump. The history of the clay is not a liability. It is the raw material. If you are in a season where the weight of your own history feels too heavy to carry, stop trying to scrub the slate clean. If you are looking at the shattered fragments of a decision you cannot undo, stop trying to hide the ruins in the dark. The divine architect is not asking for an unblemished canvas. He is asking for the pieces of the creation account that completely shifts the gravity of the story. And the detail that changes everything is waiting in the mud. If this reached something deep in you, subscribe and leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who is convinced their brokenness has permanently disqualified them from the wheel. Pray for us as we keep digging into these ancient texts. And may the God who has never once demanded a clean slate walk with you through your ruins and fold your scattered pieces into a masterpiece you could not have built any other way. Picture a Hebrew scribe in a stone room in Babylon. The air is thick with the dust of exile. He unrolls a heavy, animal skin parchment under the flickering, uneven light of a single oil lamp, smelling of crushed minerals and morning mist. The breath that will soon shake the cedars of Lebanon is hovering just above the mud. He dips a reed pen into dark ink, carefully copying the origins of the universe. He understands something we have forgotten. When we read his words today, we read them through a modern lens. We are a culture addicted to the clean slate. We love a blank page. We crave the unblemished canvas. We want the whiteboard wiped completely clean. A new year, a new city, a fresh start. When something breaks, we throw it away. When a manuscript gets stained, we shred it. When a foundation cracks, we bulldoze the entire lot and clear away the rubble. The smell of fresh paint, the crisp, sharp edge of a new journal, the untouched perfection of a newly manufactured screen in your hand. We want things without history. We want things without baggage. And we quietly project this demand for pristine perfection onto God. We assume the divine architect works like a modern developer. We assume he requires a perfectly empty lot to build anything of value. We think the prerequisite for a holy work is untouched material. We think God only wants the unbroken pieces. If your life is a mess, if you have a history of profound failure, if your past is a series of shattered fragments, he is not standing at a distance, speaking a galaxy into the empty void. He is kneeling in the dirt, pressing his fingers into the earth. The modern mind says you are disqualified. You are damaged goods. You cannot be used until you are completely scrubbed, clean, and the history is erased. But look at the text. The divine method is not an erasure. It is a salvage operation. When we read the English word created in our modern Bibles, our minds picture a magician's trick, a flash of blinding light, a sudden spark, something appearing out of absolute nowhere, completely disconnected from the dirt. And there is a specific Hebrew word for that kind of sudden, out-of-nothing creation. But the opening chapter of Genesis refuses to tell a simple, one-dimensional story. The text does not just use one word for how God makes the world. It intentionally uses two distinct verbs, two different actions, two completely different ways of bringing a reality into being. And to see the distinction that changes everything, you have to watch what happens when God gets to the sixth day. The mist rises from the ground, watering the face of the earth before a single drop of rain has ever fallen. This is the setting for the climax of the Genesis narrative. A quiet garden planted in the east, surrounded by rivers flowing with gold and onyx stone. Up until this moment in the text, the Creator has been operating from a distance, speaking massive structural realities into existence across the cosmic void. Getting his hands dirty, a set of stone tablets shatters on the jagged rocks at the base of a trembling mountain. He says the word, and the darkness shatters instantly. He speaks, and the oceans gather into their designated boundaries, while the dry land emerges from the chaotic deep. But on the sixth day, the methodology completely shifts. The cosmic scale collapses into an intimate, tactile encounter. The Creator steps into the garden he has planted, and he does something utterly unexpected. He does not stand back and issue a vocal command. Into the empty sky. Waiting for a flawless human being to materialize out of the ether. He kneels down. He gathers the loose, red clay of the ground, the Adamah, and he begins to work it with his own hands. The dust is chaotic, scattered, ordinary dirt that has just been trampled by the beasts of the field. It is not pristine, glowing material imported from the heavens. It is the common, heavy soil of the earth, smelling of crushed minerals and damp roots. The making of humanity is not a clean, immaculate conjuring. It is a physical, muddy reconstruction. He shapes the torso, the limbs, and the intricate framework of the face, pressing the wet earth together until the form of a man lies motionless on the ground beneath the canopy of ancient trees. Then he leans close, his breath mingling with the scent of the soil, and he exhales the breath of life into the hollow nostrils of the clay structure. The chest rises. The heart beats. A prophet stands in a dusty workshop, watching a potter crush a ruined vessel back into a lump of wet clay, and the dirt opens its eyes. The writer of Genesis wants you to feel the weight of this mud, because the material itself tells you something fundamental about the nature of the God who is working it. God does not demand an empty, sterile void to build his masterpiece. He is perfectly willing to take the common, existing elements of the ground, the things that have already been weathered by the elements, and TED them into something breathtaking. But to understand exactly how profound this pattern is, you have to look closely at the specific verbs the Hebrew text uses to describe it. In the opening chapters of the scroll, the ancient scribe intentionally switches between two entirely different words to describe the act of making, placing them side by side so the reader will stop and ask why. One word is used for the grand, out-of-nothing creation of the cosmos, but a completely different word is used when the hands get dirty. Open the scroll to the very first sentence of the biblical text. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The English translation uses the word created, and the Hebrew word underneath it is bara. This is the ultimate word of divine origination. It means to bring something into existence out of absolute nothingness. Throughout the entire Hebrew Bible, the verb bara has only one subject, and that is God. A king weeps over his own moral failure in the cold dark of his palace. Same pattern again and again. Humans can build. We can invent. We can design. But we cannot bara. It requires empty space. It is the uncaused cause, the calling of reality into an absolute void. But as you read down the page, the vocabulary begins to change. Look at Genesis 1:26. When the Creator is about to bring humanity onto the stage, the English translation simply says, "Let us make man in our image." It sounds like a continuation of the same magical process, just another conjuring from the empty air. But the Hebrew scribe uses a completely different verb. The word is the Hebrew Asah. Asah is not the word for creating out of a void. It is the word for fashioning, forming, and constructing from material that is already lying on the ground. It appears hundreds of times in the Old Testament, and its range of meaning is deeply physical. It is the word used when a carpenter takes raw, splintered wood and shapes it into a table. It is the word used when a potter takes the heavy, wet weight of clay and spins it into a vessel. Asah absolutely requires pre-existing material. It takes the rough, the chaotic, the weathered, and the discarded, and it forces those elements into a new design. Most people assume the biblical story of creation is exclusively about God making perfect things out of thin air. If realizing that the original language is diagnosing the exact fear you carry about your own brokenness is shifting something inside of you, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week, we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the text forces a distinction. God uses bara to build the stage. He uses Asah to build the actors. That root changes everything. When we assume that God only wants to work with a clean slate, we are demanding that he use Bara on a universe that is already full of material. We are assuming he can only work if he erases our history and starts with a pristine emptiness. The divine work in your life is not an erasure. It is a reconstruction. The Creator is perfectly comfortable rolling up his sleeves and stepping into the mess. The dust of Eden is just the first time he gets his hands dirty to make something beautiful out of common dirt. But the pattern does not stop at the beginning of the world. The real question is what happens when the material he is working with shatters. Smoke chokes the desert air. The mountain shakes. Moses descends into the camp. He carries perfection in his hands. 2 tablets of sapphire stone. We read the opening pages of Genesis and imagine a pristine, effortless conjuring, where God simply speaks and a flawless reality instantly materializes. Written by the finger of God. Flawless. Untouched by human chisels. This is a pure divine work. Pristine and unblemished. Then, the shouting hits his ears. He sees the fire. He smells the burning gold. He watches a newly liberated nation dancing in front of an idol. He lifts the perfect stones. He throws them down. A deafening crack echoes across the valley. Fragments of holy text scatter into the dirt. The camp falls completely silent. The pristine material is ruined. The covenant is shattered before it even begins. God has every right to walk away. The slate is compromised. The unblemished canvas is covered in debris. The people are waiting for the fire of heaven to consume them, assuming that because they ruined the perfection, the story is over. But God does not abandon the camp, and he does not conjure a new set of flawless stones out of the empty sky. He does not use a sudden, magical bara moment to replace what was lost. He gives an exhausted, heartbroken prophet a very specific command. Chisel out 2 stone tablets like the first ones. Moses must pick up a hammer. He must climb back up the jagged cliffs. He must hack his own stones out of the rocky, weather-beaten side of the mountain. His hands blister. The sweat drips onto the dust. The material he carries up is common, heavy, and rough around the edges. And yet, God takes this human-hewn rock and he writes the covenant again. And because we misread the beginning, we misread the rest of the story. We assume that when the material gets ruined, when the clay is marred. The second set of tablets is not a flawless conjuring. It is a gritty reconstruction. God uses Asah. He takes the pre-existing, ordinary material that a broken man dragged up a mountain, and he turns it into a holy document. And the glory that descends on this second, imperfect set of stones is so fierce, so blindingly radiant, that Moses has to wear a veil over his face just to speak to the people. The divine signature rests on ordinary rock, but that echo does not stop at the base of Sinai, because the most profound reconstruction does not happen on a mountain, and the material God is shaping is much more fragile than stone. The poet king sits in the dark. He is surrounded by power, but he is utterly aware of his own fragility. David, a man whose life is a paradox of brilliant faith and catastrophic moral failure, picks up his pen to describe the architecture of a human life. He looks back, past his coronation, past the fields of Bethlehem, back to the darkest, most hidden space in the universe. Psalm Sata kolme kumenta udexen kolme toista. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. We read the English translation, and we imagine a delicate, peaceful assembly. We picture a magical, effortless knitting process.